Why we're here. Fundamentally, we know that there's lots of containerization and Kubernetes occurring within the organization. But we've had a big discussion today about ransomware and malware. What we're seeing in the Kubernetes space is two primary things. One, misconfigurations because of skill set, and that's leading to cryptojacking type events. So not so much about your data being encrypted, but the actual state of your applications in your cluster becoming a bit unknown. So we're here to help protect containerized workloads and make sure that you can recover from those events and others. But what we're hearing from our customers as they're migrating is it's really, really hard, right? They're struggling with learning the technology and even finding people to run that technology and help refactor their apps. And this has resulted in a number of, I guess, organizational approaches. What we're seeing is the migration approaches are typically segregated. Only some of their applications are moving. And more importantly, which actually surprised me, only a portion of the applications are moving as well. So what we're seeing is you may have your web portion or a front end of an app sitting in Kubernetes and the back end still staying in that traditional database for now. And what that means is the business is looking for a way to protect not just a hybrid environment from an infrastructure perspective, but now a hybrid application environment. So that's proving quite a challenge. So as we've been talking to customers, and Commvault's been doing containerization for a while now, right? We released Docker protection back in 2017, shortly followed by OpenShift protection, and now Kubernetes native protection. So we're talking to, the DevOps engineers, to the traditional IT admin teams, and even the GMs that are being asked by their execs, can you actually get me back from an event? Before I move my production landscape into Kubernetes, can you get me back? And these are the things they're typically asking for. They want to know that they can recover just as reliably and just as quickly as they can with traditional apps. Mobility is important because it's actually just out of the box with Kubernetes. So they kind of got sprawl for free with Kubernetes. Everyone's got their own cluster. They may be on-prem, they may be in cloud. And we're seeing a desire to start consolidating now, right? We're already hitting cluster sprawl. And the IT teams that are being handed this problem are looking for unified management. So they're happy inside Commvault today, typically looking after their cloud, traditional databases, all those workloads that we just saw Janet and David go through. They just want Kubernetes to be another workload on the side. They don't want to have to be a developer in order to protect these new workloads. At the same time, they're trying to modernize their data center. And some of our customers that have already been on that journey are at a point where they're starting to accept and realize they're going to need to take a new approach to infrastructure in a containerized world. Commvault saw that change coming early, and we got ahead of that with the purchase of Hedvig. And we'll have a look today at Hedvig and software-defined storage and how it plays into the Kubernetes data protection landscape as well. And then finally, they need to save cost at the same time that they're doing all of this. So they need to be able to get their data into the clouds that they need it in a format that is minimized and constrains their cost until they need to actually start using that. And hit me with any questions, but I'm going to get to the demo where I'm sure everyone's got lots of questions. So what are we talking about here today? Commvault's quite unique. It has one of the broadest portfolios for servicing these new modernized workloads. So we have the Hedvig distributed storage or software-defined storage, which can provide storage to your actual containerized and traditional apps. We have Metallic VM and Kubernetes Backup, which we're actually going to look at in the demo today. And that's effectively powered by Commvault Complete data protection under the bonnet, right? They're the same product. There's no difference there. It's really just whether the customer wants the easy button, as Janet and David were saying, with respect to just standing up a SaaS-based or consuming Commvault SaaS-based backup for Kubernetes, or whether they have an on-prem solution that they want to manage. And we call this store, protect, and migrate. So Hedvig is storing that data. Metallic and Commvault are protecting it. And Metallic, Commvault, and Hedvig can also migrate those applications. So let's have a look at how we do that. Okay, so really quickly, before we get into how we do it for Kubernetes, I find it important to remind everyone about all of the other sources of data that are around the Kubernetes cluster. So this is a new world of building where the application owner is king, and we're not in control as much as we were in the traditional data center of where all of that data sits, who's creating it, and effectively we get told that we need to protect it. That's what the DevOps engineers or even the IT admins are telling me, right? Another person walks into their cube and says, here is another cluster, I need it protected. So what we have learned with that experience since 2017 and even before is development begins out on the developer workstation. That's your ransomware malware magnet, right? You want to protect that thing, right? Because you effectively have developer in time right out there because the source code's living out there. Eventually the output of that lands in a source code control system or a CI/CD system as well, which generates one or many container images, which you need to rebuild your environment. Finally, you have your Kubernetes applications. And then, as David was saying, truly transformed apps are dropping their data in object stores. And you're going to want to be protecting that new wave of persistent store. So David and Janet, I have covered this, so I'm not going to, well, we're actually going to see all the moving color of Metallic, but fundamentally, Metallic VM and Kubernetes backup is literally the easy button, right? So effectively, give us a Kube API server endpoint and some credentials, and we'll be protecting your Kubernetes environment in minutes. So truly a really easy way for the business to start consuming Kubernetes, but making sure they're protected without having to understand everything under the bonnet. That automation that Don was talking about at the start of the day, that's particularly key in a Kubernetes world because we're effectively integrating with the Kubernetes control plane to collect all of the metadata about the app as well as the persistent data, which we're used to from years of traditional protection.
Hey, Matt, a quick question in regards to application consistent backups.
Yep.
Most applications are not going to be pure Kubernetes. They're going to have multiple components that live in and outside of, you might have a database back end that lives outside. You might have some web front end. You might be using object store for a cache. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. So yeah. How do you kind of approach that application consistent backup?
Yeah, great question. So today it is pre and post execution, freeze, thaw, whatever you want to call it. So effectively, we integrate with the container storage interface or the CSI to perform snapshots of the persistent data volumes. Prior to performing that snap, we can run a pre or post execution script that will prepare the application for backup. The industry is currently defining what a Kubernetes application is, and I think as it matures and as the data protection working group within Kubernetes mature, I think we're going to see more and more definitions that will allow application developers to hook into that and inform both backup products and Kubernetes itself that there's something happening. But today we can do that, and we supply scripts for the common applications that our customers are using, which, funnily enough, our databases are the most the most popular stateful app.
That's not surprising. I was just thinking it would be awesome if there was something in your product where you could define an application and its components and then have it handle that full consistent backup. So
yes,
let's
there's certainly lots of interest. The market's got a lot of different approaches, right? Do you annotate the application? Do you force like another component to be forced into the cluster? We're trying to simplify wherever possible for both the operations team that's doing the protection, but also the developer. We really don't want to get involved in their workflow at all. So, and one of the things you'll see today is we automatically discover those workloads based on label selectors that the developer gives us. And then we can optionally go and add that pre and post consistency should that be required. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Cool. Not a worry. So at a high level, and that was good. We kind of jumped straight into some of the detail there, which is a great setup. So effectively, we protect any CNCF certified Kubernetes distribution. Again, listening to our customers, they're like, we need choice. We have no control over what the developer is selecting. So that whole vendor certification game and delay, there's none of that anymore. You go and hit the CNCF website. There's like 140 something distributions. Commvault will protect them. Same as Raul was talking earlier about storage integration. We saw the CSI as just, there were cheers inside Commvault when we saw the CSI not only announced, and we jumped on it before it was even completely GA to get it into our customers' hands, right? So that opens up 50 plus both traditional and the new software-defined storage arrays like Hedvig, and gives us the ability to perform volume snapshot protection for containerized apps. So we protect those apps, which we'll look at today. That's both their manifests, the actual YAML definitions that make up the application, and their persistent data. This allows us to not only recover the application to the original processing location, or to recover it to a new location, which we call migration. And we validate with a number of the leading both on-prem and cloud-managed distributions, but we're not coupled to one or the other. So Tanzu, I think there was a question there on Tanzu before. Tanzu does have a CSI driver, so we can integrate with that. It doesn't currently support volume snapshot, to my knowledge, but we eagerly await that capability. So for those that want the technical, and I won't spend too much time on it, effectively we sit outside of the Kubernetes cluster, which is both unique and a strength for Commvault. A lot of other approaches are Kubernetes native applications in the cluster, which means when you have a cluster event, you're going to need to rebuild the cluster without your backup vendor, install your backup vendor, and then start recovery. With Commvault, this is all orchestrated by what we call access nodes, which are those little Raspberry boxes on the left there, talking to the control plane in order to collect both the configuration for the application and the persistent volumes. Just to be really clear, there is absolutely no agents installed here inside containers. There's no agents inside the Kubernetes worker nodes or master nodes. It's all direct, cloud native API chatter between the access node and the API server. So let me jump over now to a demo. Let me just quickly stop sharing and find the. Okay, so let's. So what we're going to look at here today is this is Metallic. The process is identical between Metallic and Commvault Core, and we're going to actually look at the onboarding process as well, because as we said, it's an easy button, and that's really what businesses are looking for, right? They're looking for a way to adopt this technology and be confident that they're protected. So. And it allows them to grow and shrink like they do with Kubernetes. So standard dashboard, we won't spend a bunch of time on this, but basically they get visibility to what's happening in their environment at a high level. They don't need to jump down into traditional, I guess, infrastructure management. And they immediately get asked, are you backing up your own on-prem location or are you backing up AKS? We're going to choose AKS because it's an easy button because we have all of our existing Metallic infrastructure in Azure. So the customer can effectively consume the infrastructure that we already have set up. So we can see we're selecting existing Metallic storage there. There's only a single region there. I don't have them all configured in this system, but and then we're just picking the plan, which says basically how often do we want to run this backup and how long do we want to keep it for. And then once that's done, Metallic's wiring all of that up. There's no configuring, and then this is the end game, right? You provide the API server, which is your Kube API server or control plane. And then in this case, I've used a service account, and then we're adding applications. What you can see there are namespaces. So you can select an entire namespace and we auto discover, or you can select via label or volume only. So that's something we learned from our customers. Some of them they just want their manifests, or they just want their volumes, or the traditional IT teams like to have both so that they can just reschedule an app where they like. So you can see multi-cluster management here in this setup environment. I've got AKS, EKS, and a bunch of on-prem. And then that maps to application groups, which are exactly what they sound like, groups of apps with common data types, so all the prod apps and all the dev apps. So this is true multi-cluster protection with the simplification of just having one or two plans. Now, what I'm going to go and do here before a backup is I'm just going to add a label selector. And what this is us taking input from the developer. Developers told us, I label everything that is prod with, env equals prod. And we're now going to look at the cluster and find applications that have that label selector attached. And what we can see in this example is some naughty developer has dropped 2 applications in the default namespace, which we are now going to protect with our production plan. But yeah, hopefully the developers are following things and putting them in the right place. So we have a backup happening now that's grabbing all the manifests and the persistent data. And at that point, recovery is just picking your location off the calendar and clicking restore. So as I said, individual volumes, the manifests themselves, or the full application can be rescheduled on the cluster. And that's the right way to think about it. It's a rescheduling of the application. We can see there, just pausing really quickly, that's a collection of all the manifests that were collected for this Postgres app. So you can see there's config maps, the namespace definition. This actually has three replicas. So there are 3 PVCs in this case, and the service definition. So we've collected all of that from the control plane, and that allows us to reschedule the app the same way the developer would have when he or she dropped it on the cluster. So if we now go and kick off a restore, I'm picking that same Postgres system. We can restore in place, but to migrate that app, we just choose out of place. And I'm choosing EKS here. So I'm going from AKS to EKS, going to rename my app, drop it in a namespace, and then I'm choosing the storage class for that cluster. So what you're seeing here is not only a cross-cluster migration, but also a migration between storage classes, which we have customers using us for storage migration when they hit lifecycle. So I'm just showing here that my app is now running. And then if I go and describe my actual application, we can see that my volumes were automatically provisioned using CSI. This is the power of Kubernetes, of course. And we can see that the EBS CSI driver there has gone and provisioned our volume, right? And so all completely automated. That's the intelligent orchestration that Don was talking about, right? So we don't have to, the IT ops team doesn't have to worry about playing around with and manipulating Kubernetes. They can just let Commvault orchestrate that for them. So as a final step here, I'll just show you what we have with respect to, and let me know if that's going to come through. So the final step here is just to have a think about, we've talked about, I guess, the right-hand side today. We've talked about a traditional operations team backing up an entire application. Be aware that Commvault's Hedvig product, software-defined storage, has the ability to not only provide a persistent store for this data, but also to orchestrate and manipulate that on the Kubernetes command line with kubectl. So that makes it, integratable with things like GitOps. You can manage that infrastructure from outside of traditional UIs like what we've seen today. So if you've got a developer-heavy team that want to be in control of data protection, Hedvig can do that for you as well.
Yeah, I've got a question. So one of the things that I've seen lately is companies that build tools for customers to use to move from a normal VM or at least a normal application to a Kubernetes environment. Is that something that you can help your customers with as well? Are you looking at those kind of tools to integrate into all of this, or?
Yes, it's something we're definitely very interested in and watching. There are multiple answers to that problem, right? So there's Kubernetes and effectively the containerization of VMs. But then there's also what I'd almost call A to C, right? Application to container. And we're watching as, the definition of an application matures, the hierarchical namespace project matures, and even Kubernetes matures to determine where our customers are going, right? Do they really want to move VMs into containerization, or do they want to jettison the heaviness of the VM and just take the app with them? So yeah, these are definitely things we're watching and we're playing around with in our labs, but we're letting a number of the current projects mature.